Let's talk about how to pass your PwC interview in 2025. What's up guys, it's Mike with Job Ready English. Welcome to the Pass the Interview series where we break down the interview processes of world famous companies. We've done this for well over 100 companies since 2021 and it's been viewed millions of times. Today, we're bringing you the video for PwC in 2025, the UK's largest professional services company and one of the big four, along with Deloitte, EY and KPMG. We're going to be breaking down their first round interview process. Our sources come from Glassdoor, Student Room, publicly available sources, and we've gone back through candidate reports over the past 6 months to bring you a concise version of what you can expect in your PwC interview. We're going to talk about some fast facts about PwC that you can use in your interview. We're going to discuss the format that the interview would take and the most common questions we came across and how to think about answering those questions. And if you want more help, then make sure you check out the links down in the description below. Let's get started. PwC recently celebrated its 175th anniversary. It is the UK's largest professional services firm and its income grew by 9% to £6.3 billion in 2024. From this, partners earn an average of £862,000. PwC remains focused upon AI and how it is disrupting the business landscape and released OpenAI and Harvey internally to leverage artificial intelligence within its organization. 95% of PwC's energy now comes from sustainable sources, and in 2024 PwC was voted in the Times Top 100 Graduate Employers and in the Top 100 Employers for Social Mobility. So what can you expect from your PwC first round interview? Well, if your graduate, is going to be a video interview through HireVue. This is going to be a one-way video interview where the questions are going to come up on the screen. Now during the interview process you can expect to have 2 minutes to answer and 2 minutes to think about your response. Now 2 minutes to answer breaks down to roughly 150 to 200 words in a script. You can expect up to 6 questions and potentially a 10-minute case study where you have 5 minutes to present as well, depending upon the role that you are applying for. Now, unfortunately, today we don't have time to cover the case study, but if you want to know more about how to pass your case study, check out the link in the description below. We are, however, going to be covering an example of a situational judgment question that you can expect and how to answer these questions. So let's go through some of the most common questions, and we're going to be finishing off by covering an example of a situational judgment question, of which you can expect probably 2 or 3 of these depending upon the role that you are applying to. So first of all, here are 7 common motivational and competency questions that you can expect to come up in your interview. Now as ever, it will change based upon the role that you're applying to and the location that you're applying from. I know that there are people who watch these videos from all around the world, and we try to do the best that we can covering an incredibly large company across many roles. Question number 1, why this role? And what is it? So I'm going to explain this using audit as an example. Why audit? What is audit? One thing that PwC wants to know when people are applying for technical roles is that they understand what the role is, what it entails. PwC is going to invest tens of thousands of pounds into training you. For example, for audit, you would train for the ACA qualification. So what that means is that they really want you to have a good understanding of what the role involves. For example, as an auditor, you're going to spend a lot of your time out of the office. You're going to be visiting on site with clients, carrying out reconciliations, looking into the accounts of these companies, speaking to banks, suppliers, people that are within the company to help to reconcile their accounts so that it can be presented in an audit statement. Now what this means is that you have to understand that working an audit, you're going to need to be numerate. You're going to need to have a good grasp of Excel or an equivalent form of accounting software. You're going to need to have good attention to detail and good people skills. Now, the list that I provided is by no means a complete list. One thing that I suggest that you do when you're forming this answer is A, make sure you read the job description. B, if you still don't feel that it's clear from the job description what you're going to be doing, then look up audit job description or the title of the job and the job description so you can be really clear in explaining what it is that you're going to do. Now that's the first part of your answer. The second part should be you picking out 2 or 3 brief examples in a sentence where you can demonstrate that you have the really important skills which they require. It doesn't matter too much about which skills that you pick. Don't get lost too much in the detail. But what you have to remember is that as your answers are being processed, the logical way that you're going to rank 1,000 different candidates who answer this question is that the ones who have a clearer understanding of what they have to do within this job and that they have the skills that are required are going to be ranked higher than those that don't. Question number 2, why PwC? Now, at the beginning of this video, I gave you 5 to 7 facts about PwC. I actually got them directly from their website, from their annual report, which is here. PwC were one of the first companies to start showing their annual report online. It's really simple, it's really easy to understand. I like to use a little mnemonic, which is 5 fast facts. So when someone says to me, how do I answer about why I want to work for this company? Just remember 5 fast facts. You want to find facts which are specific to the company, which preferably have a relation in terms of data or a specific name or an achievement, an award, something such as this. Please don't make your facts generic. This is something that I hear all too often when people give vague and generic answers to this question. Again, what you want to think about is you want to sound different. You want to sound like you've done your homework. You want to sound like you care, not that you're just regurgitating the same answer over and over again, which is exactly how you sound if you say PwC would be a great company to work for, I could learn so much, it's got world-class people, it's got amazing clients. That's pretty much the answer that I hear a lot when I'm listening to people do one-to-ones before we start to tweak their answer. Question number 3, how will you balance studying and working? Now this is pretty relevant to graduates. For those that don't know, if you're studying for the ACAs, CTAs, CIMA, whatever professional qualification you're thinking about doing, if you're looking to work in audit and tax, it is incredibly demanding. Generally takes 3 years, and it's something where you're having to constantly be taking exams apart from in busy season. So thinking about balancing work and studies, really the answer is that you've got to be really organized with your time. Now, I've actually lived with somebody who was studying for the professional qualification, and what I observed was that she would spend her evenings, she would sit at the dining room table and she would be, studying for her exams. We would have to be really organized at the weekend because she'd need to find the time at the weekends before she, when she went back to college or if she had exams coming up. A lot of times as well, I was so impressed with how hard she worked. Sometimes she'd get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning just so she could cram in half an hour's study before she went to work. What that meant was just that the timings had to be really organized. We still went out and did other things, but it had to be really well orchestrated, and she spent a lot of time studying. I would say probably an additional 15 or 20 hours a week outside of the 40 hours that she spent working, plus 10, 12 hours a week that she spent traveling to and from central London. Now that wasn't every week, but that was, I would say, 3 out of 5 weeks that she would have that kind of schedule. Question number 4, how would you establish evidence? Now this appears to be a strength-based question, but you can use an example. In fact, when you're asked strength-based questions, which I tend to think of more as just a very direct question, like what does success mean to you and why do you think money is so important? We can tell a story, we can provide an example, and it makes us a little bit more relatable. Establishing evidence is something that is particularly important for audit and tax. The chain of events to establish evidence is, number 1, to have your facts straight, to have the data that is required, to verify that data, to check it with your colleague or somebody who is senior than you, and then to go and track that down to the best of your ability. And then providing evidence for that. Perhaps when you had a group discussion, when you had a project, a dissertation, when you're trying to establish evidence or facts that are going to support what it is that you want to do. Question number 5, how would you respond to feedback? Now, feedback is an incredibly important part of the professional process. In order for you to learn and to grow, whether that be as a graduate or professional, you're going to want to seek and find managers, mentors, people who are further along than you within the working experience that you're looking to have. Now, there's a bad way of receiving feedback, which I tend to define as somebody who's quite closed off, who becomes defensive or resistant, or tries to justify why they made the mistake. Well, the fact is that people make mistakes, people miss things out. People also need additional knowledge in order to be able to create a piece of work or to make that piece of work better. So the way to respond to feedback is actually to be really open to dialogue, and something that I like to be when I receive feedback is say, how could I improve this? How could I do this better? Is there anything that I need to learn? Is there something simple that I'm missing? Sometimes I might be making a mistake just because I don't have the relevant information required to get it to the standard that it needs to be. And then telling a story about that from when you've had that. Now, ideally that should come from your professional working life, but if not, it can come from your extracurricular activities or from your academics. Question number 6, how would you collaborate with disagreements? Now, we all need to overcome disagreements within a group. Very often I find with graduates, this comes from, a proposed subject or topic for a group project that they need to do for one of their modules. At work, disagreements happen often, particularly when you're faced with an unknown problem or a change of pace, change of idea. Maybe the client has changed something that they want and you're dealing with your colleagues rather than with your manager. So the way to do this is to listen to other people, to go beyond your own ego, your own pride, and think to yourself, what is the goal that we're trying to achieve? What is it that the client wants? What does the professor want? What is the way that I can deliver maximum value to the thing that I'm looking to achieve? And then reverse engineer this process. It's not about being right. It's not about being the loudest person in the room. Often it's about being as helpful and as valuable as you possibly can be. Question number 7, what are PwC's values and how can you apply them? Now, this is an interesting question. Generally, interview processes are built upon a company's core values. Now, PwC has 5 core values, which are act with integrity, make a difference, care, work together, and reimagine the impossible. Now, something that I suggest that you do, and you will be familiar with this concept if you've ever gone through one of our courses, is that you structure star stories. Now, star stories are just your best stories and you relate them to each of these core values. So act of integrity, doing the right thing, making a difference, being of use, care, caring and showing empathy and compassion, working together, teamwork, reimagining the impossible, innovation. Now, ideally, if you can't match all 5, then match 1 or 2. I would say 2, just in case, though it's unlikely if you were asked to demonstrate a second core value. Now, finally, what I wanted to go through in depth is talking about how to answer situational judgment questions. Now, this is something that we have as part of course within Pass the Interview Pack, which talks about how to deal with situational judgment questions. Now, these are increasingly popular across the Big Four, actually, in terms of delivering an answer for a situational judgment question orally. Whereas before you would have to rank out your answers, and now you're having to speak it out loud. So here's an example questions that I prepared, and I want to take you through the 6-step framework, how to think about answering this question, and an example of the answer, which would fit into the 2 minutes that you had to answer. Here we go. You are working with Fortune Motors. They are a long-time client in the auto parts manufacturing sector. Fortune Motors is known for its precise engineering and strict quality control. It follows traditional time-tested processes. Your advisory team recently proposed a change. It aims to help Fortune Motors capitalize on trends in smart automotive technology. The strategy is to add advanced digital manufacturing to their production lines. Your team believes these changes are vital for growth. They can boost efficiency and cut long-term costs. However, the in-person meetings at their corporate HQ was tense. It was a modern facility rich in tradition. It features high-tech control rooms and production floors with a legacy. The key decision maker, Mr. Henry Lawson, is a veteran. He has over 30 years in the industry. He is known for his no-nonsense attitude and for sticking to established procedures. He questioned the new technology's feasibility. He cited past initiatives that disrupted production and raised costs. His concerns were not unfounded. Past attempts to modernize some operations caused short-term setbacks. These experiences had made him wary of radical changes. After the meeting, he got more feedback. It said several department heads were also concerned. The heads of production, quality control and IT each oversee key parts of manufacturing. They worried the new strategy might conflict with their protocols. The production manager feared that advanced analytics could cause data overload. It might lead to misinterpretation and disrupt the finely tuned workflow. Meanwhile, the quality control head was worried about compliance. The IT director was anxious about integrating modern systems with old ones. What do you do? Your answer should include, how would you build trust and show understanding by actively listening and acknowledging their past challenges? How you should address the client's concern by proposing specific phase solutions with risk mitigation measures. Why it's important to balance clear communication with careful listening to maintain and enhance the long-term relationship with Fortune Motors. Okay, so this is a reasonably difficult question to answer, and it is more difficult than what you can expect at PwC. That's always been the way that we train people. We want your training to be hard so that the real competition is easy. Now, I'm going to use a 6-step format to lay out the beginnings of an answer to this. And it's a repeatable format that you can use to break down situational judgment question. 1, what is the problem? 2, what is the result I need to achieve? 3, who's involved? 4, what's best for the client? 5, do I have all the information I need? And 6, how can I deliver maximum value? This starts to look a little something like this. 1, what's the problem? Fortune Motors is resistant to our proposal for integrating advanced digital manufacturing due to past experiences with modernization efforts that disrupted production and increased costs. Mr. Lawson and several department heads are particularly concerned that the new strategy might conflict with their established protocols, cause data overload, disrupt workflows, and complicate compliance and system integration. What's the result I need to achieve? Well, I need to get trust and approval of Mr. Lawson and the department heads. If I don't address their fears and reassure them, they're not going to go forward with the proposal, and I need to get them to buy in. Who's involved? We already know. What's best for them? Well, if we've done our homework, what's best is advanced digital manufacturing. Better standards of quality and provision, and over time it should boost operational efficiency, lower long-term costs, and give them a competitive edge. So what else do I need? Well, I've gotten some feedback, but I could get some more insight into specific challenges and their specific problems that they're having, and how I can address this with the solution that we're putting forward. So how can I deliver maximum value? Just show some empathy. You know, essentially we're dealing with people who have had a negative experience, and they want somebody who is going to come in and address each of their individual concerns. And really, by mitigating risk, all I'm doing is I'm going to each individual person saying, hey, you know these 3 things that you're worried about? Here's what we're going to do for each of them. And this will create trust and reduce resistance. But then the answer sounds a little something like this. The problem is that Fortune Motors, a long-standing leader in auto parts manufacturing, known for its precise engineering and strict quality control, has significant reservations about integrating advanced digital manufacturing into its production. Past modernization efforts cause production disruptions and cost overruns, which have left key decision makers like Mr. Henry Lawson and several department heads wary of any rapid or radical changes. They're concerned about disruption, data overloads, and just difficulty integrating new systems with legacy technology. For Fortune Motors, the best outcome is a transition that enhances efficiency and reduces long-term cost without compromising quality and reliability. To deliver maximum value, we have to have an objective phase approach which aligns closely with their current operating protocols. We need to get some more detailed feedback on the challenges and have a customized risk mitigated strategy, so we can propose a pilot program with clear milestones, demonstrate tangible improvements on a small scale before doing this to a full scale, and systematically addressing each person's concern and breaking it down into a clear plan. So being methodical and data-driven to minimize risk and also build confidence in the new technology, moving towards integrating advanced digital manufacturing in a controlled and incremental manner. We can safeguard Fortune Motors' core values while positioning them for future growth and innovation. Now, if you want more examples of this, check out a link in the description below. I actually have done some improvements to this year's Past the Interview packs, where I wanted to release a book and a series of examples about how to answer video SJT questions, as they are pretty difficult, some of them, and having a formula and a tactic that you can use time and time again will give you a lot of confidence whenever you come across these types of questions. Let's talk about how to pass the video interview for Deloitte in 2025. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English here with another video to help you get hired. Today we're going to be breaking down the interview process for the professional services company Deloitte. I would love to know in the comments what brings you to this video. What are you most worried about with your Deloitte interview? Never fear, because in the course of this video I'm going to be breaking down the entire video interview process. Now please, if you want more videos like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to be releasing loads more videos just like this. So before we get into the video, I'm just going to break down the process. We're going to talk about 5 fast facts for Deloitte, what you can expect in their video interview format, most common questions that we identified from our research from publicly available sources from the past 6 months, actually since we did our last video, which was in April 2024, and also special cases or things that may come up that we feel that it's important that you are aware of. So let's jump into 5 fast facts about Deloitte. In 2024, Deloitte's annual revenue was just shy of £5 billion. £900 million of that came straight from audit-related services. In 2024, Deloitte launched its generative AI platform called Pear D. Over the course of 6 months, over 140,000 prompts were entered into its service. 45% of Deloitte's UK workforce are women. In 2024, Deloitte spent £62.7 million on learning and development. To put that into perspective, that's over £2,000 on each individual member of staff. In 2025, Deloitte plans to increase its headcount by 5%. Their current UK workforce is just over 28,000 people, which means by the end of 2025, Deloitte is looking to employ over 30,000 people here in the UK. So what can you expect from Deloitte's video interview process? Now, it's referred to by different names. It's going to be done using HireVue. It's going to be a one-way video interview, and it's going to be a job simulation, or what's also called a day in the life of. Now, this is going to be a mixture of questions. Generally, candidates reported that this lasted up to an hour. And it's going to be a mixture of SJT ranking questions, 6 video response questions, which will be a mixture of motivation questions, competency questions, and perhaps a commercial awareness question. And there were some special cases reported. Deloitte slightly unusually alters its job simulation based upon the role. Now, you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, but Mike, surely that's a common thing to do. Actually, it's not. A lot of companies will use exactly the same process for different roles. So Deloitte is unusual in that respect. And there are some special cases which have been reported, which I'll go through after I go through the common interview questions and how to think about answering these questions. In terms of timings for the video interview questions, candidates reported different timings, so I'd like to think about a minute to think about your response and then 2 minutes to answer the question. So let's jump into the 9 most common questions that we found from our research. Question number 1, why do you want to work for Deloitte? Now, you'll notice in my 5 fast facts, I gave you some pretty interesting facts about Deloitte, which realistically probably couldn't be said about any other company, apart from the facts about the percentage of women who are working at Deloitte UK. Now, that is really what they're looking for in their answer. Now, if you've got 2 minutes to answer this question, you want to dig out 4, 5, 6 facts, depending on how long those facts are and how interesting you find them. Make sure you find facts that you personally are interested in. It doesn't matter what type of facts they are, but I suggest they are not the same facts. So it shouldn't be loads of revenue facts or loads of diversity facts. That becomes a little bit samey. Bonus points for this question is taking one of the facts and relating it to yourself. For example, if you are a young woman watching this video and you said, well, I'm actually really encouraged by the fact that Deloitte's workforce is almost 50% women and 50% men. You could talk about the gender pay gap. This is something which relates to you. Most importantly for this question, please make sure that you're talking about something that you find interesting. If you find it boring, you're gonna come across as bored. Question number 2, why you? Or introduce yourself to your colleagues. Now, this is an unusual question, the second part or the second type, because essentially they're the same question, right? So introduce yourself to your colleagues. So basically you've gone to your job, you're showing up at a client's site and you're introducing yourself to your colleagues. How do you do that? Well, here is a really simple 6-part framework to think about how to do this. Who are you and what are you doing now? What have you done before in the last 3 years? What's your work experience? Voluntary and extracurricular activities, and finally, what are your skills, interests and hobbies? And the last bit, which I really like, is ending with a bang, or something that's a little bit of a hook, something that's interesting that would start off a conversation with somebody. So for example, if I was to introduce myself, I might say at the end, and I also, in the summer months, really enjoy canoeing. That's something when you talk about, the other person's going to go, canoeing? Tell me a little bit more about that, Mike. Let's have a conversation. If you want to know how to do that a little bit more in depth, then make sure you search our Tell Me About Yourself video from Job Ready English, where I break this down into more depth. Question number 3. Why this role? Why do you want to do this job? What has attracted you to applying for this position? Now, when we're answering this question, we want to think about it in 2 parts. The first part is explaining what you would do in the job. Now, normally when I talk to people about this, they're a little bit confused. They're like, but Mike, why am I explaining what sort of job that I would do? They know that. They're the ones that are advertising for the job. Okay, the reason why you're doing this is because you're doing a one-way video interview through HireVue. HireVue is taking what you say and is putting it into words. It is then going to use that to match it up to the job description to think, this is how close a match I think Mike is for what we would like him to do. So by explaining what the job is, the skills, the responsibilities, the technical ability that you might need, you're going to be demonstrating that you understand what you're going to do in the job. Now, the second part that we want to add to this is 2 or 3 key skills that you think, I'm really good at that. I'm really good at numeracy. I'm really good at teamwork skills. I'm really good at leadership, and a little bit of proof. I have great leadership skills because I've actually led my university rugby team for the last 2 years, which was meant traveling away all around the country for 57 different matches and leading lots of different teams. The reason why we want to provide the proof is this is the difference between an opinion and an experience. An opinion is just what you think. An experience is proof because you have been through that. Question number 4, tell me about a time you worked as part of a team. Now, when you're answering competency questions, what I want you to make sure that you're doing is using STAR, which is situation, task, action, result. The majority of your answer should be based in the action. And the action is really where you demonstrate what's good about your teamwork. What makes somebody good at teamwork? Well, they're a good listener. They do their part. They try to help others. They're communicative. They understand that they're working towards a common goal. They go above and beyond to help others and realize that it's about we and not me. And that's just a couple of things that you can outline. Now, some important things to think about in STAR in general is situation and task is pretty brief, but think about when was this? Where was I? Who was I with? And make sure that you end with a result which shows that you really understood what you were doing, and by being good at that skill, you were able to get a great achievement and reach your goal. Question number 5, tell me about a time you had to overcome a problem. Now, working at a company like Deloitte, you're really going to have to learn to become a good problem solver. Now, what does this mean when we're talking about overcoming a problem? Do I mean, well, I've run out of milk, so I need to go to the store, or how can I solve world hunger? No. something a little bit in between. I would suggest that there should be an element of complexity to the problem. Now, the problem could be that you're having to do multiple things at the same time, that you're having to do something which is particularly difficult. If this thing is difficult, then it's important that you explain to the camera, why is this difficult? What are the things that are involved? And if you're struggling to think about how to answer this question, don't think about telling. Think about teaching somebody else to overcome the problem which you have just overcome. Question 7, give me a time when you led a team. So again, using STAR, a lot of these are revolving around teamwork, leadership, problem solving, conflict resolution. These are really common skills that we come across in interviews for large companies that they're looking for. In fact, as I seem to remember, when I broke down a series of script templates a couple of years ago from one of our courses, I really broke down most competencies to 6 key skills, whatever the job and whatever you're doing. So now when we're talking about leadership, what are we really looking for? Well, number 1, why are you the leader? How are you going above and beyond to help other people? How are you allocating your resources, communicating, marshalling people together to make sure that they're all getting the things that you need to get done, and you're also not burdening them with other things? A really important thing about a good leader is essentially they are the person with the bird's eye view of everything that's going on. All of the people that are being led by you are not having to worry about what Fred's doing, what Steve's doing, what Susan's doing. They're just worrying about their own part. They receive direction from you, and this gives them some reassurance and also allows you to marshal and administer your resources as you move towards that common goal. Question 8, tell me about a time you made a mistake and what did you learn from it? Now, this is what is known as a negative competency question. A time when you made a mistake, a time when you failed, a time when you missed a deadline. Now, what's really important about this is understanding that these are lesson style questions. So don't turn around and go, I've never made a mistake. I don't have any weaknesses. Well, I've never missed a deadline. Okay, probably if you're like me or most of humanity, then you have. So first of all, if you're stuck thinking about an answer to this, just say out loud the first thing that comes to your mind when you're posed with this question. There's going to be something that just grabs you. Then just lay it out how it is. Don't try to dress it up. Don't try to minimize the mistake. The chances are, if you are a graduate applying for a job at Deloitte, you haven't made too many mistakes and the mistakes haven't been that big. Okay, so when you're laying it out, just lay out the steps that led up to the mistake. And a lot of times when I'm listening to people give their answers, it's due to a lack of information, a change in circumstances, or naivete. And naivete is basically leaving something too late, thinking that you're better than you are, maybe being a little bit arrogant and having that sort of youthful confidence that is brilliant and that companies love, but also leads people to make mistakes, because that's how we learn and how we get better. But importantly, you make the mistake. What did you learn? What can you do better? How can you improve? Because it's really important as a young professional, a young person growing into becoming a mature adult, that we are able to accurately self-assess things and go, do you know what, mate? I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. This is what I'm going to change, and this is how it's going to be better. Question number 9, tell me about a recent piece of business news and how it relates to the role that you're applying to. Now, one thing that I noticed, though these commercial awareness questions weren't that common, I wanted to highlight this in the video. Now, of course, if you want the very best help to pass your video interview, make sure you check out our updated Pass the Interview course for 2025. I have completely rewritten the entire course, and I think it's even better than ever. And I'm going to cover a lot more stuff in terms of breaking down exactly what it is that you need to do. But I didn't want to have to get you to go and buy a course, to really make sure that you know that you should be prepared with a piece of business news that relates to the role that you're applying for. For example, if you're applying for M&A, it would be a recent deal. If you're applying to be an audit associate, then it could be something that's happening in the audit industry. And you can do this by looking up a piece of industry news from an industry website, finding something which interests you, and being able to just easily condense that into 30 to 60 seconds. The reason why I say it should be something that's interesting to you is so that it will be easier for you to explain, you'll be more interested in it, and also try not to choose anything that's too complicated or that you're struggling to explain in 120 seconds or less. Okay, that's it for most common questions. Is there any questions that we missed? Any that you think should be added into that list? Let me know down in the comments below. Next, I want to talk to you about special cases just to make you aware. And for me, there were 3 special cases. What do I mean by a special case? Well, in programming, you would call this an edge case. This is basically where something has come up more than twice. If something comes up once, even twice, I tend to disregard it in the sense that we are not able to marshal our resources effectively if we're trying to prepare for every single possible thing that could happen. This is an ineffective use of our time. We want to be focused and deep rather than broad and shallow. Because if we're broad and shallow, we're just going to be not very good at a lot of questions. Where if we're focused and deep, we're going to be pretty good at the vast majority of frequency or probability type. Whereas if we're deep in our focus, we're going to be good at the most common things that could come up. So the 3 things that come up were specific commercial awareness questions related to your role, which I covered in question 9, a short case study and an email response, and an additional business email response. Now, something that I do recommend that you do is practice case studies. This is super important. If you want access to short case studies, it's all included in our Pass the Interview pack, where I walk through and explain to you how you can answer these case studies and put all that information into a business email. Let's talk about how to pass the video interview for KPMG. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Real English here to help you get hired. Today we're going to be talking about a member of the Big 4 professional services firm KPMG and how you can pass their video interview. Now guys, if you don't already know us, we do pass the interview videos every week for some of the world's biggest and best companies. So make sure that you subscribe, like the video, and drop me a comment down below because I'd love to know, how did you find us, what role are you applying for, and where would you like to work at KPMG around the world. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 fast facts about KPMG, which you can use in your own answer for why you want to work for KPMG. The most common questions that we came across from our research from publicly available sources. I'm also going to be talking about a special case today, which is a case study which you can download for free, including the presentation answer, if you click the link down in the description below for the KPMG Pass the Interview pack. It's completely free. So let's get started and talk about 5 fast facts for KPMG. Last year, KPMG had a revenue of £2.99 billion, which was just a 1% increase from the previous year. However, there was an 11% increase in profitability. In the UK, female representation firm-wide is now 50%. And in fact, if you were part of the student intake in 2024, there were slightly more women than men, with 53% of the intake coming from women. KPMG recently chose a new national charity partner, Fair Share, and devoted 97,000 volunteering hours. KPMG's total community contribution, which includes cash, time, payments in kind, totals over £11 million and has affected and helped over 330,000 individuals. And in total, KPMG supports 841 organizations. So what can you expect from the KPMG video interview format? Well, there was a slight discrepancy. Some people talked about a 2-stage interview process, which was transforming small businesses, which was a mixture of case studies, SJT, questions, numerical questions, logical questions, and then a one-way video interview. And some people just spoke about having a one-way video interview. So to make this a little bit easier, we're just going to be concentrating on the interview, but in my special cases section where I deal deal with what I call edge cases, or things where I think that they're relevant enough and have come up enough that you should be aware of them and know how to answer them. I'm going to specifically be talking about case studies and walking you through a case study which I wrote myself with the trusty help of AI, which is going to make it really easy for you to understand how to tackle these case studies. As ever, if you want more information, more resources, and everything that you need to prepare for your KPMG interview, then just check out our Pass the Interview pack down in the link in the description below. So what could you expect from the interview by itself? We generally tended to see 5 questions and 2 minutes to answer, and these were pretty much a mixture of competency questions and motivational questions. So I would say a pretty vanilla interview process. Here are the 7 most common questions that we came across while going through interview memories for KPMG. Just so you know, how we do our research is we go through information from publicly available sources over the course of the last 3 to 6 months. So that's somewhere in the order of 100 to 250 cases, which we review, and then we compile them all in this video and then elaborate in our Pass the Interview pack. Question number 1, tell me about a time when you worked as part of a team. Give me an example of your teamwork in action. Now, this could be structured as a competency question or as a strength-based question, but ultimately we can still use the STAR format to answer it. Now, STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. Where were you? Situation. What were you doing? The task. What did you do? The action. And what happened? The result. Then when you're answering using a STAR-based format, make sure that the majority of your answer is contained within the action. 70%. Really, when you're being asked a competency or skill-based question, what the interviewer is looking for, whether that be an algorithm that is parsing your video and then analyzing your text, or it's a person sitting in front of you, they're trying to pick up that you understand, in this case, what is good teamwork. So in your answer, you're going to be mentioning things like good interpersonal skills, talking, listening, helping, being available, being a good team member, going above and beyond, being constructive, being solution and action orientated. Now, these are just a few of the things, and I would say generally in the action part of your answer, you're looking to put 4 or 5 of these things in to show that you have a clear understanding of what teamwork is. Now, really importantly, a common mistake that I want to share with you is that I will have people who book one-to-ones with me and they will give very vague answers. When I was at university, I was part of a team of 5 and we had to do a finance project, and for the is so vague, it's so boring. In 2022, I was at Edinburgh University studying a master's in finance. I was put into a team of 3, which was myself, Steve, Susan, and Chris, and so forth. You'll notice how the more detail that there is in terms of the people, the places, the time, which creates context and makes the story more interesting. Sometimes people say, well, I don't want to mention Steve because he may not want to be mentioned in my answer. I'm like, dude, Steve's never going to know. And besides, you're not giving his full name and also his picture to a camera, are you? Come on. Question number 2, which KPMG values do you align with and why? Now, just as a reminder about KPMG values, there are 5 of them: integrity, excellence, courage, together, and for better. Now, my advice to you is to pick 1 or 2 of these values. A really common mistake that I see with these types of questions is that people will try to cram in an answer where they talk about how they're most closely aligned with every single value. Now, if you think that you've got 2 minutes to deliver your answer and there are 5 values, that's not a lot of time for you to talk about each of them. It's about 24 seconds. Make your life easier and pick an example from your life where you feel that you can demonstrate 2 of these core values. Question number 3, why do you want to work for KPMG? I started this video giving 5 fast facts about KPMG. Probably a little bit more, but I like the facts to be complete, so they might be two-parters. Now, what you want to think for your answer is you want to give facts which have the same level of detail. Now, I have to admit, when I was putting together the research for a fact sheet which goes into our Pass the Interview course, I found KPMG a little bit more difficult than most because not so much of its stuff is online. It doesn't have a standardized annual report, and whereas normally I would quite easily be able to find 150 plus facts, I just about managed to find 100, but that's still not too bad. Now for you, you're wanting 5 or 6 key facts. It doesn't matter whether they're financial, about charitable giving, awards, and so on and so forth. Just as long as they resonate with you, you find them relatively easy to remember. And for bonus points, maybe mentioning one of the facts that was personally really interesting to you or resonated with you personally. And that's a way of injecting your personality into this answer. Question number 4, tell me about yourself. Now, unusually for the big 4, KPMG seem to be one where you actually have to do TMAY or tell me about yourself. Deloitte is kind of similar, where it asks you to introduce yourself in front of a colleague. Now, if you want an in-depth explanation to how to answer this question, just search tell me about yourself Geogbody English, where I lay this all out for you. But in short, this is a 6-part answer. What are you doing now? What have you done in the past? Work experience, extracurricular skills and activities, skills and interests, hobbies, and ending with a bang or a curiosity hook. So what are you doing now? What have you done in the past, in the last 3 to 5 years, in your last job? Maybe you're at secondary school, maybe you're studying a bachelor's degree. Work experience. So this is a good opportunity for you to just clearly and succinctly explain what you did and what skills that you learned. Extracurricular activities and hobbies, just outlining the things that you are interested in. Maybe some examples outside of school and work where you have gone above and beyond to contribute to your community. Skills and interests, languages, technology, any other weird and wonderful skills. And ending with a bang or curiosity hook is where you just say, well, actually, I really like to sail in the summer. And that's just one of those things where if you end a conversation with that, they'll go, what do you mean you like to sail? Tell me more. You have a boat? I like boats, and so on and so forth. Tell me about yourself, or your personal introduction is a really great place to start your interview preparation if you haven't already done so, even if you don't have any interviews. When you think about it, the crux of an interview is about being able to sell yourself. And a good personal introduction will set you off in the right direction. Question number 5, why do you want to do this job? Now, when you're answering this question, it's good to have a job description to hand for the job that you are applying for. If not, look online from another company or use my favorite website, which is prospects.ac.uk. The reason being is that the first half of this answer is essentially you explaining what you would do in the job. What this does is that it satisfies a higher view algorithm or a person who's talking to you that you actually understand the job that you're applying for. Because shock horror, people apply for jobs that they're not qualified to do, and actually they've got no idea why they did it because they're just click, 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 applying. The second half of this answer is picking out 2 or 3 really good examples that are short sentences that demonstrate the skills which you believe are important to do the job. So it could be good numeracy skills, that you've got great interpersonal skills because you've helped to lead your hockey team for the last 2 years and have had to put the team together over 70 different matches, for example. Question number 6, what is your biggest strength? Now, this and the next question we're going to deal with, which is the biggest weakness, they have been seen together and also apart. I like dealing with them separately. When you're picking out a biggest strength, this is very similar to thinking about the second half of why do you want to do this job. Picking 2 and no more than 3 strengths which you can provide a concrete example, a situation, task and result where you demonstrated that strength. Why? Because otherwise it's just your opinion with no evidence to back it up. Question number 7, what's your biggest weakness? But this is a really common question that people struggle with. They struggle to think about what's the right weakness, what's a believable weakness, what's a weakness that's actually secretly a strength. My best advice to you, as long as it's not random drunkenness or punching people in the face, just give an element of truth, particularly if you're a graduate. We all have things that we're just not that good at. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can be not that detail orientated in certain things. I can be quite disorganized. It is a weakness of mine. That may not be the case for my work, but sometimes it's the case for the things that fall in beneath the cracks in between. It's much more easy for me to talk about it because it's the truth, and it's not a weakness that is so detrimental that somebody would say, well, we absolutely shouldn't let him in the house because he's probably going to steal everything. So when you're thinking about your weakness, think about it like a lesson that you have learned and how you have become more organized. So for example, in terms of my disorganization, because I have a media business, which Job Read English is part of, and also a food business, I try to be really organized in terms of what I'm going to do in setting out my time, because it's basically myself and a couple of part-time members of staff. So I have to be really organized and know exactly what I'm doing with my time. Otherwise things end up coming late. For example, this video, which was meant to be released on Friday and is not coming out on Friday. So now I want to go for a special case, which is a case study. Now, case studies in terms of professional services, the interview processes are proving to be increasingly popular. They are not to be mistaken with management consulting case studies. They're not as long, they're not as in-depth, they certainly don't require any type of technical knowledge in terms of carrying out particular types of analyses or looking at data or these sorts of calculations. They're relatively vanilla, they're pretty short, and they're quite time constrained, where you have a brief amount of time to read and also a certain amount of time to prepare. So if you click the link down in the description below, which is for the KPMG Pass the Interview Pack, you'll notice that there is a case study section, and there will be a case study which is called Star Beans. Wonder who that's named after. And you can download this for free and the answer. If you want to take the time to do it yourself, please feel free. Put this video on pause, and then when you come back, I'm going to be screen sharing with you and going through the exercise and also the answer. Okay, so this is Star Beans. It's 5 pages. It's pretty short because it's really spaced out. So when you get a presentation, there's just a few things I want to point out. Number one, how much time do you have, right? Because you don't want to spend all your time reading and then present. You need to be reading for a few minutes and then already, creating some notes, putting them on a piece of paper in front of you, and making sure that you understand the question. Always skim read through the material. These methodologies are something I go through in great depth in this part of the course. But so we know they've got possible solutions. Anywhere you see numbers is important, particularly for a professional services firm, whether you want to be hot on it. The other thing to know is just because you have the case study doesn't mean it's all necessarily going to be relevant, right? But in here, this is pretty easy. It's pretty vanilla. So we've got this, high street coffee brand, 400 locations, customer spend has dropped by 14%. So there's a loyalty club, and only a quarter of our members are part of the loyalty club. There's a problem where people are getting squeezed for money, so they're bringing cheaper options or bringing coffee from home. We've got these emails, so something from finance where they're basically saying, look, we need more money, so increase the average spend by basically make people buy more stuff, get more people into the loyalty club. I suppose the idea of that is that they're much more likely to be returning customers, or create some new products. Also find our budget. So this is our budget to turn stuff around. We want to drive up basket size, increase orders, increase loyalty program signups, and also get ROI within 3 to 6 months. So we start to kind of know that anything that's not doing this isn't any good. We've got some industry news. Loyalty members spent 25% more. Brands, so where people are looking at stuff in app and they're much more likely to spend. And also we could do the old coffee plus snack bundles. And then we're into the possible solutions, the costing, the timelines potentially. So in the presentation, I'm And really importantly, a lot of people forget to say, hi, my name's Mike. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. An overview roughly of the problem and also the context. Laying out the pros and cons for each option. A really common mistake that I see when people are doing case studies is they just choose one thing and they're like, I choose this thing. And it's like, oh, okay, but why didn't you choose the other things? Oh, they're not good. It's like, right. But I mean, I paid you money as a fictitious consultant to review the options. I still want to know what the other options are, right? Going through, you'll notice through all of this is really short. I like bullet points. I like short sentences. Bearing in mind, you're doing this as a presentation, so you're going to have to be reading off the screen. So you don't want to, be reading big chunks of text. These are just small practical things that I get people to think about when they can get lost in it. And finally, your conclusion, what you choose. Doesn't matter if you didn't choose the right thing, the same thing as me. There's not really right or wrong answers in most cases, unless there's like a glaringly bad thing. It's just, have you met, are you, boosting those return visits, asking people for questions and saying about why people or why you wouldn't choose other products. Let's talk about how to pass your EY video interview. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English. Today we're going to be talking about how to pass your EY video interview, one of the big four and one of the largest professional services companies in the world. Before we get started, I would love to know where you're watching this video from. Drop me a comment down below and let me know what country you're watching the video from. And if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video, as this helps more people find our videos and gets us out there. And it's just a little way of saying thanks for the free content. So let's talk about EY, and we're going to go through 5 fast facts about the company that you can use for why you want to work for EY. I'm going to talk about the interview format. I'm going to go through some of the most common questions that was asked in the EY video interview that you can use to prepare for, and how I would think about preparing for those questions. And I'm going to be going through a special case because EY's job simulation has a number of scenario-based video interview questions. If you're not familiar with these, stick around until that part of the video, because I'm going to be going through an example taken straight from the EY Pass the Interview course, where I break down how to answer a question like this step by step. Let's get started. EY UK audits over 20% of the FTSE 350 and 25% of the FTSE 100. At any given time in the UK, EY is training 3,500 students. Quite an astonishing figure when you think about it, considering EY has 20,000 staff. Last year, EY launched a $1.4 billion global investment in AI through its platform EY.AI. In 2024, EY's net revenue increased 3% to £3.7 billion. EY has a number of charitable efforts. Its EY Ripple network has impacted over 5 million people, and a small example of the impact it has is through the Felix project, where it distributed 13,000 meals in London. Okay, so what can you expect from the EY video interview process? So we go through publicly available sources going back over the past 6 months to really see what candidates have said about the process. EY is quite similar to PwC and Deloitte, but probably a little bit more grueling, if I'm honest. Doing something which is called a job simulation. Now this is a 1-hour test, which is a mixture of motivational questions, some written response questions, situational or scenario-based video interview questions, questions related to the role, maths questions and logic questions. Quite a few of the candidates reported that it's a really exhausting process because it is full on for an hour. Now, candidates reported a different number of questions and a different makeup in terms of what's contained within the test. So we propose that EY has constructed their HireVue one-way video interview job simulation, quite similar to Deloitte, in the sense that it is structured slightly differently based upon the role, but there's not too much differentiation. And we found that there were anywhere between 2 to 6 video interview questions, depending on the role, with apprentices reporting 2 questions and graduates reporting up to 6 questions. So let's have a look at the 7 most common questions and how we would think about answering them. Question number one, why do you want to work for EY? Now, when you're answering the motivational question about why you want to work for a company, we're looking for a level of research which is similar to the facts that I gave you earlier. Now, of course, I've given you those for free in our EY Pass the Interview Pack. We've given you over 100 facts taken from different reports that EY has produced, but we're looking for a level of specificity, which means that you could not say this fact about anybody else. Now, if we're assuming that you would get 2 minutes to answer this question, I would find 5 facts. 5 or 6 facts, people talk at a different speed, and as a bonus point, find a fact that means something personally to you. For example, when I talked about the Felix project, feeding people who are homeless or in need is something that has a deep meaning and resonance to me due to how I grew up and also how homelessness has affected people that I know. Question 2, why do you want to do this role? So whether you're applying for audit, tax, advisory, or deals, or one of the many roles that are contained within those 4 divisions, you should have a really clear idea about what you're going to do on a daily basis. This is going to be the first part of your answer. It's really going to help the algorithm pick up that you understand the keywords that are in the job description. More than likely, having looked at a number of EY job descriptions, they're not that helpful, so you might have to go somewhere else to do your research. I often recommend prospects.ac.uk because it is a phenomenal government-funded resource which gives you so much information about the role. You also want to mention what are the key skills that you would need, and in the second half of your answer, provide 2 or 3 skills with proof. For example, if you're applying for audit, you might say, I've got excellent numeracy, I've got great attention to detail, and I've got great Excel skills because I've used it for 3 years during my university degree. Question 3, why have you chosen this location? Now, this was quite interesting to me because very often companies sometimes will ask why you've chosen not to work in London, but this seemed to come up quite frequently about why have you chosen London, Reading, Manchester, and so on and so forth. I think the best way to answer this question is really just to be honest and speak about the things that move you about the place. A lot of people, when I speak to them and they choose to apply outside of London, is because London is quite expensive, it's very busy, it's cramped. The standard of living in all respects, not just rent, also food and going out, just very high. And there are some people who just think, do you know what? I'd rather just go east, west, north, even south, and probably I'm going to get paid a couple of £1,000 less, but everything's going to cost half. So that's the reason why I want to do it. If not, you might want to pick out 2 or 3 interesting facts about the place where you want to work. There's no need for you to go over the top and say about how you've always wanted to work in Leeds and it was your dream since you're a small child. That's probably not true. No disrespect to Leeds. Question 4, what are your motivations for working here compared to the other big 4? Now, this was a question that was asked numerous times, so I think it's well worth preparing for. What you would really want to do is make sure that you have good facts prepared about EY. So it's not about talking about why Deloitte, PwC, KPMG are no good. That is also too much research in terms of just talking about comparisons. But if, for example, you talked about EY's Ripple initiative, which has impacted over 5 million people, that's a big deal. That's something that's specific to EY, and it might be something that appeals to you. If it's to do with the fact that EY wants a certain percentage of its partners to be female by a certain year, that might be something that appeals to you. So again, perhaps you want to pick out a couple more facts based upon your research to make sure that you're really clear about why EY is different and zero in on those facts rather than comparing it to the rest of the big 4 instead of saying, for example, EY wants this percentage of female partners by this year and KPMG wants this and Deloitte and PwC. That's something that people often think about when they're talking about a comparison, but we're really just zooming in on what makes EY great and say, that's why I've chosen EY over the rest of the big 4. Question number 5, How would you deal with a difficult client? Now, professional or services work is client work. It's driven by dealing with different people, different company, different levels of management, and generally lots of different people within another company. EY is going to be working with some of the largest companies in the UK and around the world. When you're dealing with a difficult client, first of all, it's really important to understand and appreciate, why are they being difficult? Are they being actively rude and obnoxious? Are they withholding information from you? Are they just not being communicative? So we need to clearly identify the problem. The next thing that we want to do is we want to be as proactive as possible. A very common problem that a lot of people face when they're working with clients in professional services consulting, I've had this problem myself, is that your client wants different things to what you want. Now, you might talk to them, but they may be like, oh, look, I'm too busy. I mean, I feel sorry, my accountants have the same problem with me, because they'll chase me for information, but I'm busy making videos or doing consults or doing something else with another business. So what that means is, number one, just being persistent. Sometimes it's about picking up the phone. It's about understanding where the client is coming from. And also, really importantly, it's about not taking it personally. Even if a client is rude, defensive, arrogant, the public you is not the real you. You are just a representation of a company. It's kind of like if you go into a bank and you're really upset because your bank hasn't paid a certain amount of money to somebody else. You're not angry at the person, you're angry at the bank, but the person is a representation of the bank, i.e. the public person is not the actual person. You're not angry at Margaret just because she's Margaret. You're angry at Margaret because she happens to be the person who's in front of you. And very often what this means is about listening to the other person, allowing the situation to de-escalate, communicating about how you're going to solve the problem, and if all else fails, it's just escalating the matter. Just passing it on to your manager or whoever's in charge or another one of your colleagues and say, look, this is all the things that I've tried. I don't seem to be making any headway. Can you give me some advice about what to do next? Or is it possible that you can jump in and help me out? Question number 6. How will AI affect your service line? Now, something that I'm quite mindful of is that there is probably going to be at least one question which relates to your role. Now, it could be about what you're expected to do or why you're interested in the role, but also there were a number of different commercial awareness questions that came up. Now, there are 2 ways for me of preparing for commercial awareness. Number 1 is thinking about business news that's affecting your industry. And number 2 is thinking about technology and AI and how that's affecting your industry. Now, in both cases, choose something which is small, microeconomic if possible, not macros in how is AI going to affect the global workforce? Or, I mean, holy crap, how long have you got? I certainly can't answer that question with any confidence in 2 minutes or less without dithering and going all over the place. But if you're talking about this is how AI has helped a specific company do a specific thing, that's what I mean about microeconomic. Just talking about something that's specific, easy to explain, and something that you are genuinely interested in. Now, this last point is really important because sometimes when I'm preparing people for interviews one-to-one, they will start to talk about something which is clearly boring to them. They're not really that interested. They're just reeling off some facts and figures, and you can almost see them thinking about dinner while they're giving their answer. Pick something which you genuinely find interesting, because that's going to come across in your answer. Question number 7, how do you manage multiple deadlines? Now, this is a common problem for somebody who's working in a professional services environment. Now, when you're answering this, you're going to think about doing this in a STAR format: situation, task, action, result. Where were you? What were you doing? What did you do specifically? What happened? What's the result? Now, the majority of your answer should be based around action. I would say 70% of your answer at the least. What you're really looking for when you're talking about multiple deadlines, what I tend to find, so this might be probably 3 things. 2's not really enough. 4's maybe too many for you to cover in 2 minutes. And when you're talking about it, imagine that you're teaching somebody to do the thing that you have just done. Very often when people just talk about it, they leave out a lot of the details and say, well, I had these 3 things to do, and then I did this and this, and then it was done. It's like, okay, I feel like you missed out a big part of the story. But when you're teaching someone, you're like, right, okay, so if you have 3 things to do, first you're going to do A, and then you're going to do B, then C, And then, so when you're teaching, you naturally think about the steps that it takes to do the thing that you're trying to teach that person to do. Next up, I want to talk about scenario-based questions. Now, when I redid the Pass the Interview courses for 2025, big change that I have seen, especially over the past 2 years, is the rise of what I call scenario-based video interview questions. So this is where a scenario is posed and you have to answer the question going through how you would handle the scenario. I also call them video-based SJT questions. And I notice it's something that nobody really addresses because they're a little bit tricky and there's a certain amount of work that goes into it. Now, in the EY Pass the Interview course, I have provided quite a large booklet as well as walkthrough videos with 15 questions. And here I want to provide you with one of the questions and a walkthrough answer so you can get an idea about how to answer these questions. So let's run through the question together. As part of an internal audit team, you must present a detailed financial analysis of a multinational corporation. The report covers several years of complex data, intricate regulations and key financial metrics that affect strategic decisions. Your audience includes senior management, board members and department heads from various areas, many of whom are not financial experts. The presentation is set for a quarterly review meeting with over 100 people in attendance. In addition, you know that previous presentations on similar topics have left some stakeholders confused, leading to follow-up meetings and delays in decision making. With this in mind, you want to ensure that your report not only delivers accurate data, but also tells a clear story that highlights the implications of the analysis for the business. Your challenge is to make the technical details accessible while maintaining credibility and precision. Your answer should include 1. How would you simplify your report and presentation style? 2. Techniques you would use to explain complex data in simple terms. 3. Why clear communication is key for everyone to understand the information. Now in the course, first of all, I teach a 6-step structure, which is what is the problem, what's the result you need to achieve, who's involved, what's best for the client, do I have all the information I need, and how can I deliver maximum value? Now, this is a really good way of breaking down these types of questions. Now, you might be sitting there and saying, well, yeah, but that's really time consuming, isn't it? It is. But once you learn how to do these types of questions, this is something that you start to do automatically. Once we've done that, we can turn it into a complete answer, which is 3 parts. What's the problem and who's involved? What do I need to do? And how can I deliver maximum value? The challenge is to make a complex financial analysis easy to understand for everyone. The audience includes technical experts, senior managers, and board members without specialization. The best approach for the client is a clear, well-organized presentation. It should clear up confusion and aid in making informed choices. By cutting out unnecessary jargon and focusing on key insights, the presentation can empower stakeholders. They need to grasp the key trend and what the data means for strategy. This understanding shows how the findings lead to business opportunities or needed changes. I will redesign the presentation to give more value. I'll use simple visuals like charts, infographics, and bullet points. These will turn complex information into simple, easy to understand pieces. I will use stories and analogies to link financial ideas to everyday business problems. This will make them more relatable. I will invite questions and make the session interactive. This encourages dialogue and helps confirm understanding. Before the presentation, I will ask a small test audience for feedback to improve the delivery. I make sure the audience gets a clear and actionable view of the data. This will help them to make smart choices that lead to success. It also shows our dedication to clear and precise communication. Now, if you want to know any more about how to answer those questions, make sure you check out the Pass the Interview course. I created 15 questions, a 47-page booklet and walkthrough videos. There's so much more in that course as well. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Please drop me a comment down below. Let me know when you're interviewing or what company you'd like me to cover next. I'd love to hear from you. I read all the comments and I reply to all of them, as long as they're not super mean, which some of them are. Have a great interview, good luck, and I'll see you next time. Bye.